So the problem with having to have a higher power and them basically insinuating that you have to get back in communication with the artist commonly known as God is a problem for me because me and God got some issues.
Yeah, I, you and I have differing views on spirituality. I don't outright reject the idea of a higher power, but I largely reject the idea that we are in communication with said higher power. So the idea that my only way to recovery is through talking to something that I don't think I can talk to is a big issue for me.
Well, unbox that. You mean you can't talk to it, but what, like
I
it's not
don't think there's,
conscious?
I don't, if it is conscious, I don't believe it has any interest in us if it's conscious.
Where does that come from?
Just a general view that with all the bad stuff happening there in the world, there are sort of three options in my mind. Either God doesn't care, which is, and has more interesting creations to play with, more interesting toys. Um,
Other
isn't
Netflix shows.
Yes, other Netflix shows to watch with more interesting storylines and better writers.
Right.
Um, or he's God isn't all powerful and can't fix everything. I feel like it's probably one of those two. It's either apathy or a lack of power, and I lean more towards apathy.
Kind of sound like my daddy. And let me translate that for the Yankees. Father.
I know what that meant.
Me and him used to have these discussions when I was a Sunday school teacher. You know, and I'd be like, I'd be explaining everything I could to him, and he would say, "Son, I believe that there's a man up there. The big man is what Daddy called him." He said, "I believe in the big man, but what I don't understand is if he exists, how come there's so much suffering in this world?"
And that's sort of where I'm at. I believe that something out there exists, but I struggle with that second part. The part where the mainstream Christian opinion is that God is all caring and just wants the best for us. I struggle with that part of the equation.
I think any thinking person who's seeking does. Because
Yeah.
it is a conundrum. It's like why, not just on the
Uh,
global level, but on a personal level. If God loves me so much, why?
like, okay. For my very specific circumstance, let me be 100% clear because I've had a lot of religious people in my life misconstrue this. I have no issue with my disability. I am perfectly comfortable
Mhm.
with my situation. No bitterness about it at all. But if there's a higher power that is all caring and just wants the best for us, I have some words.
I know what you mean, man. Well, the oldest book in the Bible, and I've often felt like him sometimes, is the book of Job. All right. You know the story of Job?
Vaguely.
Vaguely? All right. Well, I'll just wrap it up and give you the Crumpton version. Basically, you got this dude. I mean, he was all about God, by whatever name you want to call God. Okay. But he was all about God. Like he was his man. He was blessed. And Job had this wonderful family, he had, land, property, all the good, good, good.
Mm,
And the story goes that the devil, Satan, the adversary, whoever, whatever you want to call him, the bad guy of the story, the bad guy of all the epics, Thanos, okay,
mhm.
shows up and and God's like, hey man, where you been? And the devil's all like, I've been running to and fro. See, most people think that the devil rules hell, and the actual Bible says he's never even been there.
Yeah, my interpretation of the devil comes from the show Lucifer.
Yeah, yeah, that's Hollywood.
I know,
That's
I,
total Hollywood. Yeah.
but
Uh,
I mean, the idea that the devil's not really there
well,
to do any bad, he's just there to sort of punish the people who show up in his place, and he doesn't want to be there.
well, and technically, let me get Baptist on you. There is there people get them confused. There's actually a distinction between the devil, Satan, the Antichrist, and Lucifer. They're
Yes.
they're all different identity, but I digress. I don't want to get all that. Good, good. So anyway, in the story of Job, the devil is like, "Hey, I've been running to and fro," and God is like, "Have you considered my servant Job?" Now, the story always seems funny to me because it's almost like Anne Rice would say that one time, with vampires have these extrasensory perceptions, and that one of these vampires caught God and the devil playing a game of chess on a coffee shop in Paris one time. That's almost how it's set up, is that these two guys are playing a game. Oh, over men's souls, and Job kind of comes off that way because it's like, dude, what is God doing? But God basically is like, hey, here's my cool servant down there, and the devil's all like, well, if you took away his family or whatever, he would curse you to your face. And God said, well, go do it then. So the devil does it, and Job, he doesn't understand. He's not, but he's like, what the hell, mom. And then little by little, the devil keeps going back and forth from heaven to earth. And every time God says, well, take that from him, take that from him. And the whole wager is if you hurt a man enough, if you make a man suffer enough, that he will curse God. Right? It comes down to this guy is broke. His kids are dead. He's got boils from leprosy where he's having to scrape it off, the pus off with like broken pot shards. He's in a bad way. Okay. And he's got these three friends that show up, and the whole book of Job is basically they're having this discussion where each of his three friends, great friends, keep telling him that the reason these horrible things are happening to him is because he sinned. He did something wrong, right? Even his wife tells him, you should just curse God and die, right? Now, most of the book of Job is somebody who's in our positions and everybody else's positions, a place of suffering, rock bottom. And he was a good man, a righteous man, an upright man, but he's at rock bottom and he's mad. And the whole book is like basically his friends telling him he's screwed up, and basically that's what it is. And him knowing in his heart, regardless of what the situation looks like, that he didn't do anything wrong. And he's begging out to God. He even says, my heart is bitter. But guess what he didn't do?
Curse.
He didn't curse God.
No, I mean,
And as a
I,
result, what happened?
I don't know.
He gets everything that he had lost back like seven or tenfold, something like that. He's
Yeah,
completely restored beyond where he was at after enduring that suffering, right? So that's the book of Job.
yeah, yeah. I don't. The sentence is going to sound funny considering I even question the existence of a higher power generally. I don't curse God, whatever. Whatever. It is what it is.
It is what
But,
it is.
but what sparked that whole thing was the person said to me, "Oh, I found my keys. I'm so blessed. God blessed me, helped me find my keys." And I just, it got me in that moment. Like, really?
Lowered expectations. I
I
mean,
know,
okay,
and it,
hey,
it, it was a little unfair. I kind of went off on her, and she said, "I didn't know you were so bitter about your disability." And it's like, I'm not. But you're saying, "Oh, you found your God helped you find your keys." If that's his priority, well, I got words. If his priority is helping you find your keys, I
I
got
re-
words.
yeah, I remember this Saturday Night Live skit where there was a woman like that, and she was like, it was Sally Fields doing the skit, where she was in the kitchen and she was going, thank you, Jesus, for these cookies turning out okay. And then thank you, Jesus, for this house plant blooming. And thank you, Jesus, for my vacuum cleaner. Then Jesus pops up. It was played by Phil Hartman, like a puff of smoke. And Jesus is like, Nancy, I hear your prayers all the time. I love you. But do you really need to thank me about the cookies? I thought it was hilarious. And some people think stuff like that is blasphemous, and I'm like, dude, Jesus Christ had a sense of humor. If you've read the Bible, you know this was a prankster. I mean,
Yeah,
I,
I remember the story about him with the blind dude.
yeah, I mean, there's tons of, dude. One time I got into, well, I didn't get into the argument. Somebody tried to argue with me when I was a Sunday school teacher because I used the phrase, "I love Jesus' sarcasm," and they came up to me after the class. And they were like, that is disgusting. That's blasphemous. And I go, what did I say? And they were like, Jesus is sarcastic. I'm like, have you read the Bible? Like, have you read it? Like, when you read it, how, do you be like, thou art? No, that's not how I read it. I read it like an action story. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, and I mean, this dude, like, you got to picture, you got to close your eyes and picture. This was one, he was a political activist. Okay.
Mhm.
He was a religious activist, a spiritual activist, but he was a bad dude. This wasn't something butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. This dude would rip your face off if you were leading people astray or taking advantage of people or acting all pious and whatnot. This dude sat there tapping his foot in the temple when these money changers were ripping folks off and doing, currency in the house of the Lord, tapping his foot, making a whip. And when he'd had about enough of it, he beat the living crap out of those money changers and knocked their tables over. And that's my Jesus. You know what I
Your so what I'm hearing is your Jesus doesn't help people find their keys while ignoring bone cancer in children.
Dude, he's got employees that'll do that. You know what I mean? I mean,
Well, then
maybe through the chain.
the human resources manager in the kingdom of heaven needs to do some employee rearrangement. There needs to be a reprioritization.
Well, I hear the Archangel Michael's just had the coronavirus for a while, so he's slacking on his work.
Uh, yeah, they might need to take some of the paid leave away.
I don't know, but does Jesus help people find keys? You know, Dylan, probably so. Probably so. And it's like people like you and me and other people who have, Dave Chappelle said something excellent one time. He said, "You suffer and I suffer, but don't try to compare our suffering." Right?
No, suffering is far too subjective an experience to do a one-to-one comparison.
Right. So I mean, we shouldn't be bitter whenever we come across people who need Jesus to find their keys because it's like, well, God must think very highly of me because he's put way more burdens on me than losing my keys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the argument that God only gives you what you can handle, and I don't love that argument.
I don't love it, but it's unequivocally true because I'm here.
Well,
You know what
I
I mean?
mean, you and I are here. There are plenty of people who aren't here.
Well, that's theological. But either way, getting
Uh,
back to the concept of God,
Apologies, I kind of derailed that.
I don't think there was. I think it was really good stuff. We'll probably
All
dive more into it because I'm having to dive back into my spirituality now. So like whenever I immerse myself in the 12 step, and the first thing you got to do is admit you're powerless, which for me is that's a tough one.
yeah,
You know,
I mean,
like I am
that
powerless over
cuts
these.
deep.
Yeah, it's like I'm powerless over these conditions.
That
Yeah,
gonna be real. That's probably the biggest struggle I have in my life.
it is. I mean, and it's because we're men. Yes, I'm powerless over what? What? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's in my face all the time, and I still can't accept it.
Yeah, but then, but you have to. I mean, you have to go. All right. Well, the way I've been living is like we said, untenable. It's unmanageable.
Yes. Yeah.
It's unmanageable with my own willpower.
Hmm.
So, what I'm looking at in these 12-step books has to be true. I may not like it. It may make me feel small, but the fact is, it's true. It's a true statement, and you can't argue with evidence.
No,
The overwhelming evidence that
I'd love to,
I'd love to too, but you got to
but
admit
we
that you're
can't.
powerless. Yeah, you can't. You got to go, okay, I can't do this. Like
Yeah.
you said, this is unmanageable. It's untenable.
Hmm.
And I've come to that place. So it's like, oh, well, there's a huge vacuum there. And so then in these 12-step programs, they say it's, well, what you feel it was your higher power. Because if you can't do it on your own, under your own steam, you have to have a power outside of you and above you. And so I'm sitting here like, you know, going, okay, well, I got to do this again. Me and God we've been going back and forth for a few years, about a decade. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
God, we got to chat.
yes, like, yeah, we got to chat. But
Hmm.
then I go, well, you know, in all actuality, what I'm pissed off at him for is kind of silly, and I can't change it. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
and again, yeah, and again, let me be clear. I'm not pissed off about what I have. I'm confused.
Confused. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
not
I was,
pissed.
and I was confused too, but I got some really good clarity, and I'll get into it later. Just don't let me forget. So, one, after like having my first therapy session, Dylan, oh God, for 3 days, um, sitting down, being absorbed in the process, not analyzing it, putting my smart ass syndrome to the side, and just really being absorbing myself in the process for 3 days, maybe 4 days. I have never I don't even know where the fluids came from to come out of my body in the form of tears, okay? And I'm not talking about the Native American in the littering video back in the 80s single stream tear. I'm talking about every muscle in your body
Oh my
contracting,
God. I'm
and
s-
now I have abs of steel wailing
I,
on the floor.
I'm sorry, but that video, I had to write a paper on that video.
Did you?
Yeah,
Take it away.
it was it was for an advertisement for a political action committee, and I'm an advertising major, so we had to write about that as a form of deceptive advertising because I don't know if you know the backstory behind that ad.
He wasn't Native American, I think, right?
A, he wasn't Native American. B, it was produced by a group that was funded by an oil company to suppress climate action.
Oh, well,
It
yeah.
was made to make people believe that the government couldn't solve the environmental crisis and that government action was pointless and that big actions weren't going to help.
Oh,
That was the point of the ad.
well,
So sorry, that just I know that's derailing again, but that was just it was a big it was an important ad for my thinking.
understood.
Can
I
continue with your
I can
tears.
say what? Yeah. So no, it wasn't like the Native American tier. This was like full body, but you know what it was all it was years and years and years and years and years of repressed pain. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Coming out of me, just pouring out of me, banging out of me. My butt, dude, it felt like I had like lifted 300 pounds on a weight bench.
Hmm.
You know. So it was like, okay, so I got all that out, and now I got the whole vacuum of the powerless thing out. So now I got a bunch of vacuums of toxic stuff that's been expelled from my body, in my mind, in my heart, in my spirit. I got to fill it with this higher power, which is God, who I've typically been pissed off at. And, then I was just like, ah, well, screw it. It's like, dude, God, it's me.
Yeah, God, we got to chat again.
God, yeah. Hey, uh, sorry, I was a douche. You and
That was a bit of a douche canoe.
that was kind of a douche sickle, and kind of need your help. So you think we could, I don't know, be friends again? Maybe be friends. Now, so now it's like, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to fill it, and I have, and not to mention Alcoholics Anonymous and 12-step programs. They talk about after you do this process, and the way it's worded is almost new agey, but it's also very true. It's like miracles start happening. Back to back, rapid fire, miraculous things happen after you do that first step. And it's the truth. Like it is the truth. And I've dabbled in the occult for 10 years or more. I've seen freaky stuff that I don't talk about on podcast stuff, but I've seen freaky stuff. I've seen people do freaky stuff. I've done freaky stuff that defy the laws of physics and things. Okay. So it's like, I know what it looks like when the matrix is bending. And after I did that first step, like it's, I couldn't even write down how many had happened. So that starts to happen. And I go, okay, well, last time me and you were, on the good, I kind of pictured you as this Zeus-looking thing on a throne. Can kind of see Zeus's face, but basically you were a horrifying entity to approach. And God was all like, "Yeah, I know it's kind of scary, right? It's kind of scary, all the lights and the lightning show and the sounds and the I'm God and I'm on a throne." And I'm like, "Yeah, God, that's kind of intimidating, man. So if we're going to do this again, if it's supposed to be a God of my own understanding or a higher power of my own understanding, um, let's work on that a little
Yeah,
bit.
we tone it down a bit.
Can we tone it down a little bit so it's more easy for me to kind of come to you when
Yeah,
I need you all the time?
can you be a little more approachable?
Be a
Maybe
little,
less fire and brimstone,
yeah, a little
more
bit
peace and
less,
love.
yeah, a little bit less than that, and the whole, yeah, let's not do the Job thing anymore. Can you, I don't know, just update your image for
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
okay?
Update your image.
Update your
We're
image.
let's do a rebranding.
Yeah, God, we need to rebrand for me, just for me. Okay. Now, I don't think that this is. Now, I know there's probably some Christians who are listening, going, "That heathen." But wait a second, hear me out, because if you could make your point, you're not crazy, right?
I'll grant it. Go on.
Okay. This is where I'm coming from. Okay, and it's working. Like it's working for me. It's my higher
That's
power.
all
It's
that
my
matters.
understanding. Right. So hear me out. Okay. So I know some Christians are probably thinking it's real blasphemous to do that, right? But wait, the Bible says, in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to be like a little child. Okay? You have to be like a little child. You got to be like a little kid. So, and that's what the book says. So, don't come to me saying that this process of thought is against the Bible or anything. I've heard all that religious abuse stuff before. I know what the book says. And it says you got to be like a little child. So in my head, I go, well, I was a little child. I'm actually still a little child, just in a grown-up body. I just woke up in this body one
Yeah,
day.
we're all children. If you want proof of that, go listen to a fart joke. If you laugh, and you will, you're a child.
Yeah. So I go, all right, well, when I was a kid, I mean, and I still am, I'm very imaginative. Kids are in their imagination. They're in that right brain, intuitive, creative area, right?
Yes.
So, okay, God, your book says I'm supposed to be like a little kid. All right, cool. I can do that. So, through this process, I'm going through a bunch of micro traumas from my childhood leading up to bigger meteor impacts of traumatic events as an adult. And so I'm dealing with all this stuff and I'm supposed to be like a little child. What in my childhood was my safe place?
I'm sorry. Can I? This might be an insensitive question, but I think it's funny. Is your version of God Picard or Superman?
Neither.
Really?
No,
I
we're getting there. We're getting there. So, Dylan, knowing me, what do you think was one of my safe places as a kid?
uh, comic books,
Comic books.
The Starship Enterprise.
That was when I was a teenager. I didn't get into Star Trek till I was a teenager.
Ah,
But my safe place is comics.
yeah, Marvel, DC.
Right. Stories about superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why? Well, I mean, well, when you're a little kid and you're helpless and you're powerless, you I learned to reading Spider-Man, The Amazing
And
Spider-Man.
it's always it's nice it's nice to believe that there's something that powerful out there that's a force for good,
Yeah, and they
especially as a
are.
kid.
Yeah, and
Especially as a kid.
they are. And they're, that's why I love being alive right now with the Marvel movies, because all that stuff from me reading as a kid is coming to life in a way for a new
Yeah.
generation.
So this isn't directly applicable, but I feel like it's relevant to your imagination here. Zack Snyder, the director of Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and Justice League, was doing an interview for his new version of Justice League, and he said, "I view superheroes as the modern Greek gods,
Yeah,
as
well,
mythological creatures, as the mythological heroes of our age."
partly, but you know how I view them?
How?
Now the type of belief structure that I'm really most comfortable in is more of a Christian slash Buddhist hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's yeah, it's more philosophical than dogmatic,
Right.
and The rituals are more customizable to you according to Romans 14, which says basically make up your own religious rituals. Do that yourself. But I believe that Buddhism is true and Christianity is true and the philosophies of both are true. And I believe that Siddhartha Buddha and the person we call Jesus Christ, I don't like calling him Jesus Christ because it wasn't his name. It's like I don't like people calling me Dan or Danny. You know what I mean? Like, what if I
Hmm.
just called you, hey D, or what's up, Lynn? You know, it's like, it's not my name, dude. Don't call me Danny. Don't call me Dan. It's Daniel. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So in my head, it's like Jesus's name was not Jesus. Like there was no J there. You know, that was created later. So it's like I don't like calling him Jesus. Like him Yeshua because that was his name. But anyway, just for the sake of not making people like uh, uh, resistant to what I'm saying, I just say Jesus Christ just for the sake of it. You know who I'm talking about. You know,
Yes.
rock star on the cross, that guy. Okay, big.
God. Actually,
What, dude?
Jesus.
He was a rock star. I believe he's a rock star. Sidebar. There was this other time where I used to have a poster of Jesus with a electric guitar, and the poster said "Jesus rocks."
Of course you did.
Of course I did. I mean,
That's the least
Jesus.
surprising thing I've heard all day.
It was a gold embossed whatever you call it, embroidered poster with Jesus Christ rocking out with an electric guitar. It said Jesus rocks. This fundamentalist Christian came into my house one time and stared at that and had the audacity to chastise me for having that poster because it was blasphemous because the word rocks comes from the 50s and it means to have sex.
Mm, I got bad news for him. The word rock was around a lot longer than the 50s.
Either way, that type of belief in Jesus Christ, that type of policing of other people's thoughts, feelings, and emotions, I'm not down with that.
Yeah, that's why I've always been very iffy on religion. It's so punitive.
Yeah, religions, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
The Bible says it's whoever worships him in spirit and in truth. And that's a little difficult with organized religions that have been structured for,
yeah,
you get what I'm saying.
yeah. The way I've always viewed it is maybe God exists, maybe he doesn't. I'm gonna live my life. I'm gonna live my life in a moral way and hope that none of these organized views of him are true, and that if God exists, he'll appreciate living a good life.
Sure. I mean, I think God lives through us anyway, but I digress. So when you're talking about the Marvel heroes being the Greek gods and Zack Snyder saying it, well, I've always viewed each Marvel hero from a biblical point of view. I see the Bible in every single one of those heroes. I see biblical messages in every one of those heroes. I mean, with great power comes responsibility. That's directly from the Bible. To whom much is given, much is required. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And I also, breaking down movies and everything, I think me and you or me and somebody else did like a 3 hour breakdown of Spider-Man Homecoming, this
I wish you.
bubblegum movie
I
where,
wish you and I did that. That sounds fun.
yeah, I did like 3 hours on it, breaking down how every single scene of that movie was the story of Jesus Christ. I mean, that's why on most of these posters, the main hero has their arms outstretched in a cross. It is what it is. Like, that's what it is. That's what I see. I mean, you're going to see what you want to see, but
Yes.
but
Yeah.
with these movies, I see moral stories coming from the Bible. Okay, and I don't find that silly because if you actually go back to the Bible and Jesus is talking, every time he's trying to relay spiritual truths, he always says the kingdom of heaven is like, and then he always tells stories or parables to get his message across. Always. If he was walking the earth today, he would say, the kingdom of heaven is like Avengers Endgame. That's what he would say. The battle of good and evil and Christians, which means little Christ, which means superhero,
Hmm.
because you're supposed to have powers like Christ. He says, everything I did, you'll do more. So when I read these books and I watch these movies, it takes me back to my Christian beliefs, my beliefs in the biblical 66 books and plus, plus more. But I still practice like a Buddhist type way now But the Dalai Lama, when he was asked one time, they said, "Do you want everybody to convert to Buddhism?" He says, "No, no, 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 no. I want you to stick with the faith that you were born into, and find peace there." So that's my kind of my view. So
Mm-hmm.
I say all of that to say, while I'm having this bargain with God, now that I'm admitted that I'm powerless to my ailments, and I'm like, we need to rebrand God. Uh,
And you look
so
like Captain America?
no, no, man, I can't believe that you're missing this.
No, I was being facetious. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was out drinking some tea on my front porch, beautiful wind coming through. I'm talking to God, been, listening to, a bunch of praise music and praying lots, a lot of the serenity prayer. And I'm like, all right, God, we need to rebrand because last time, I was a little scared of you, and sometimes I would hide from you, and I didn't want to be around you, and I felt like I couldn't come to you because you're going to be mad at me because you kind of look like Zeus, and I didn't want to get shocked and get my, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, so how do you? And I don't want to picture you as some nebulous, oh, God is the universe. Oh, great. Well, I'm a human being, okay? I have to kind of, sort of, in order to relate to this entity, anthropomorphize it in some
Right.
kind of a way, right?
Mm.
And that's got to be true biblically because the Bible says God became a man. He anthropomorphized himself to be relatable.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, so God, I'm going to close my eyes, man. And before we start this relationship again, because I'm powerless, I need you, my higher power. How would you appear to me? You know who popped in my head first thing?
Uh, who? Spider-Man?
No, a director's chair and Stan Lee sitting in it.
Ah.
Now, I've met Stan Lee,
So have I.
and you know for a fact that that was one joy-filled, humble, kind, appreciative, grateful man. Just his energy, just being in his presence.
Mm-hmm.
So I say all that, Dylan, to say that God's not God's name, right? And you have all these different wars and these different splinters in our collective consciousness and divisions amongst people over the quote name of God. Right? Is it Allah? Is it Jehovah? Is it Jesus? And so I just said, all right, well, to me, a higher power of my own understanding kind of looks like Stan Lee. And so I was like, hey, God, can I just call you Stan?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, yes, true believer. Yeah, dude. Yes, true believer. You can call me Stan. Now, I don't want to be misconstrued here. I am not saying that Stanley is God. Does it come off like I'm saying that?
No, no, no.
Okay. I'm saying that for me as a person to be able to relate to an all loving higher power, there's one man on the face of the planet who I met in the flesh that I almost kneel to, and it was actually Stan Lee because he was such a loving entity. I mean, you felt it. You felt it. He created a universe in his head, you know? That's
Mm-hmm.
admirable. And he was deeply appreciative of his fans. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'll just picture Stan Lee sitting in like a director's chair whenever I need to go pray. That'll make me like run to him all the time because it's the foundational part of my moral code from my developmental years, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, so I'm not saying Stan Lee is God. I'm just saying whenever talk to God, I see Stan Lee sitting in a director's chair. And this is not too far fetched biblically. Because I'll have you know that if you go back through the Old Testament, every prophet or holy man had their own individual intimate name for God. Did you know that?
I did not.
All the Old Testament prophets made up a name. Jehovah Jireh, that was one. Jehovah, I mean, there was all Papa. I mean, Christ called him Papa, Abba Father. When he was on the cross, he said Abba, it means Papa. They just made up their own name for God because it's supposed to be, Christians, an intimate relationship with this entity.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, basically, I see Stan Lee sitting on a director's chair, his throne, right? And it's like, I'm not Stan Lee, but Stan Lee is a really, really, really good storyteller. And I guess I'm one of his characters in a comic book. And so I just have to trust that Stan Lee knows how to tell a really, really good story. And I do. Now I do.
Yeah.
And it all kind of clicked for me like, okay, I'm powerless. I got to see a therapist. I got to go to 12. So I'm powerless. I have to admit that I'm powerless. I have to now communicate with this higher power. And what's the best, most addictive way to do that? Stanley. So,
Stanley.
yeah, Stanley.
Stanley.
Stan the man. Enough said. And
That's,
my theory also, by the way, for anybody who's into the Marvel movies and everything, he's in every movie. I believe that he is he who is above all, which is God. Because he's playing
well,
God in
in
all these
Guardians of the
movies.
Galaxy Volume 2, he did appear as the Watcher.
He was with the Watchers. This is true. So anyway, I digress. Basically, what I'm saying is, what am I saying? Is there a point?
Um, I don't know. I'm following your lead here.
So
Uh,
I'm saying, you know, I don't know. I mean, I
I'm
guess
assuming there's a point.
there's got to be a point. I mean, I guess what it is talking about trauma and talking about anxiety and talking about deep-seated issues and going underneath your own, steam for as long as you can, and that'll work out for a while. But ultimately, whatever we've already said it before, but it doesn't matter what your disease is or your disorder is. It's all basically manifestations of basically one thing, maybe two, which is the suppression of stress and the avoidance of pain. All of it doesn't matter how it manifests. And um, and you're like the person who's talking right now is somebody who's just one of the most stubborn, ardent. I'll do it myself. I can take anything. I can put the world on my shoulders. And I'm saying, if you have considered getting help,
Get it.
get help.
Seriously. If you've ever thought to yourself, I could use a therapist, get a therapist.
Well, I mean, another thing is, if you find your, and I'm guilty of this, God knows the people around me know this is true. If you find yourself telling the same story over and over and over again about what happened to you, uh, you need a therapist. I'm just saying, you know,
Yeah.
you need a you need a therapist because you're reliving it over and over and over again. It's a merry-go-round,
Hmm.
and hey, I'm not saying I'm Mr. Perfect. I walk on water and I'm completely free of it. I'm still guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. You know, because like you said, you're trying to understand it, and I guess a word picture that I have is, my dad was in the Korean War. Saw a lot of crap, man. He was on the Gray Ghost, USS Iowa, first ship in, buddy. Fired the most artillery and had the most artillery fired upon. My dad saw some stuff. He saw war, buddy. He never talked about it. Whenever I asked him what was war like, Dad, he would say, "War is hell, son." And that was all he ever told me. I never got any stories because I know that he went through some stuff. But my dad used to watch MASH. You've seen MASH, right?
Only through reruns. My dad loved MASH too.
Right.
He watched it constantly when I was young.
Yeah, and my dad would watch MASH. He would watch I mean, we would watch it together, but he would watch the same episode over and over and over again and laugh at the jokes as if it was the first time he'd ever heard it. And, MASH is about the Korean War and everything. And I
Hmm.
got thinking about that. And I was like, my dad got PTSD from, the Korean and Vietnam War. Why would he repetitively watch a show about war over and over and over again? But it was because he was trying to, like you said, understand.
Hmm. Yeah.
Understand.
I've always. That's the approach I've always taken with my issues. Is if I can understand them, I can overcome them.
Yeah, and a good buddy of mine recently said, he says, "Dude, once you get to the root of the problem and you understand what it is, it's done." You
Yeah,
know,
it's all about getting there.
But yeah, you just got to get there. Do the thing
The
that
end.
you want
The
to
end is the journey.
do. Yeah, the end is the journey. So, I mean, I don't know. Um, all I know is that for me, finally admitting that I needed help with these issues, and being able to go, okay, well, here's a person that's not involved with my personal life, my job, my social circles or anything like that, that isn't going to judge me. I can just vomit. I can just say what I
Mm.
got to say. It felt like, and me having suppressed as much as I've suppressed for as many years, that first session was like the pop of a cork, you know, it just all came out, and it felt great. It just,
Yeah, I'm sure it did. I mean, luckily I don't have as many deep-seated problems, but dude, it was a relief telling somebody my issues.
yeah. And tell me if you share this sentiment. Whenever you release it, like for me, it was like, okay, well, now I can fill it with whatever I choose. That place where that stuff was at, now there's a space where I could put some stuff I want to do, you
Right.
know, and feelings I want to feel and thoughts I want to have, I could put there now.
Yeah, no, I completely feel that.
Which is also funny, and I'll tell you, this is another mode of therapy people could try. Of course, in the 12 steps, it talks about an internal house cleaning. Um, that is great therapy. Like
Yeah.
the past week or so, there's like, I mean, except for pollen everywhere because I'm in Georgia and everything's yellow. I've got a gray and black car. Well, usually
Oh,
it's
dude, I
yellow now.
I I couldn't live in Georgia. I have terrible allergies.
I mean, I had to literally before, we started recording earlier, I had to wipe my desk off because it was just yellow
Yeah,
with
I have
pollen.
horrible allergies. Like, I I will sneeze at almost anything.
So where was I going with that? Pollen.
Internal house
Ah.
cleaning.
Oh, internal house cleaning. But dude, I have like, I've been, as above, so below, as within, so without. I'm like, okay, well, my house is my memory palace. It represents my state of mind. I literally, and I have a phobia about mail. This sounds so crazy, which is why I see a head doctor. I have a phobia about mail. It doesn't matter if it's in the mailbox or in my inbox or voicemail. I'm terrified of mail. Have I ever told you that?
No,
I don't know what it is. I guess I'll have to talk to my shrink about it. But I'm like I'm scared of mail, and literally I've had a stack of mail, personal mail, in a corner in my office for 3 years.
dude.
I know it's sad, but because I was terrified of
I,
of the stack of mail. 3 years these personal letters have stacked up, and I'm just like, ah. Every time I pass by it, like Nosferatu looking at a cross or something. It's the
yeah.
weirdest thing. I get people who finally get a hold of me on the phone, and they're like, I left you 3 voicemails, and I got a thing for voicemail. I'm sorry. I didn't even know I had an inbox set up. Somebody else did that because it wasn't me. I don't want mail.
Well, now I understand why sometimes it takes so long for you to get my text.
Mail scares me. It's the weirdest thing, and I'm sure that it's in the DSM-5 somewhere. It's like somebody who is scared of mail is basically in their childhood they stumped their toe on a turd. I don't care, whatever. The mail was sitting there, so I'm like, all right, I'm working these steps and everything. I got all this coursework. I got coursework from 12-step program. I got coursework from my therapist, and I got independent coursework that I'm doing. So it's like I'm back in school. But so I was like, okay, I get to the internal house cleaning. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna pretend in my head, just use my imagination, because I'm also going back through learning neuro-linguistic programming. So like I'm really trying to assault this thing. You know what I mean? With everything I got, I'm throwing everything, spirituality, I'm throwing
Mhm.
philosophy at it, I'm throwing everything I got at it. With help this time, thank God.
Mm.
Or Stan. Thanks, Stan. Um,
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. But I was like, that's 3 years of personal mail. I went through that in an hour with the vacuum of like having all the stuff out of me. I was just like, I put a placard up on my sobriety station that basically says procrastination brings the greatest pain, taking action brings the greatest reward. And I'm like, I'm going to go through that mail. And in my head, I'm like, it's going to take me 3 days to go through this mail. But I did it in an hour. Did it in an hour.
Really?
And I applied, I was like, okay, every single bill or piece of mail that I shred is basically guilt and self-punishment. Every single one, every time I shred one, it represents something I haven't forgiven myself for. Okay, so you see what I'm doing?
Yes.
And when that stack of mail was gone, I was like, I'm, I mean, dude, like when I looked at my office and there was not one shred of mail that doesn't have this week's postmark on it, I jumped up I was like, I am free. You know what I mean?
Well, it's unfortunate that you had 3 years of mail, but
Yeah.
it's very fortunate that you had a visual representation to unpack.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was actually genuinely helpful.
Well, and I learned that technique whenever I started getting into Buddhism years ago. Um, when I built a Zen garden, I like in my head, I was like, all right, this garden represents my mind. So it's like an interact. It's a feedback loop that you create with the world, the outer world, and the inner world. Just like as I pull this weed up, it represents shame. As I pull this weed up, it represents slothfulness. You know what I mean? So you're training your subconscious as you're interacting with this video game world to do what you're programming it, right? It's what's um, so that's kind of what I was doing. But dude, I mean, after like doing internal and external house cleaning, I feel so much lighter, so much freer. I'm not like terrified that I'm a ticking time bomb that could go off the rails at any moment. Like that's not even there anymore. Like right now. I'm not saying it'll never come back. I mean, that's why I'm going to stay in therapy and everything like that. But I'm saying
Right.
the process that I have avoided for a long time anyway, you can't argue with success.
Hmm.
So I would just say, and I know talking about 2020 and all the events on a national and global scale, man, I know people are like hurting. People are hurting. And me being as stubborn as I am, I just say, look, dude, even if you're hurting a little bit, if any little issue is debilitating you slightly, consider it. Consider therapy.
I really don't think it's a negative for anybody.
Um,
I truly don't. What could be the harm in talking to somebody, getting an unbiased view of yourself? Uh, if you're confident in if you have issues, great, you need it. If you are confident in yourself, then what's the harm?
yeah, I mean, and
Uh, I mean, I know that's a bit of a weird view. It's just the one I have.
well, if me from 6 weeks ago heard me now, I would just turn myself off and be like, yeah, hogwash. You know what I mean? And here's another thing too. I used to be this way when I was a teenager. I never wanted to go to AA or anything. But I was like, well, AA only has a 10% success rate, so
But it,
whatever,
but it
right?
has a 10% success rate.
Well, yeah, that was me. That was like 22-year-old me. It only has but the me today is like, I like those odds. You know what I
Yeah, those are solid odds. I'll take. I don't love it. I'd like it a little higher, maybe plus 50, but I'll take 10.
I'll take 10% when after I've come to the realization that not doing it means 0%.
Yes, if you give me 10 or 0, I'll take 10.
Right.
I'll
I,
take
right now, 10 is looking really good to me.
Yeah, yeah. You give me 10 or 0, I really like 10. 10 sounds fantastic. When can we start?
Yeah. Where's that line? Where's that dotted line? 10's not the loneliest number that you'll ever do. I don't know. I mean, I found it beneficial. I can feel the madness in the world, and I think it would be beneficial for other people too. And another thing is, and this is something I really want to, start doing with us is um, bringing other people on to just tell their stories, like Maurice. I'm almost finished with his book, and I had to stop at one point last night reading it because I know him personally, and like I was reading it because he was in a car accident. I want to. I'm going to hold off as much as I can until we get him on. But he was in a bad car accident, and you stop and you read it and you go, wow, this dude, when he describes all the stuff that happened to him with his spinal column and his basically his face getting ripped off, and I mean, not ever supposed to walk again, and you know the guy personally, you know what I mean? And it humbles you because you're like, he's kind of been through more than me, and he's like one of the most cheerful people. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
people need to hear that. And of course, when I discuss it with my therapist, this novel that I've been hovering over, I wanted to use it as an outlet to basically, it's, the story of trauma, the story of emotional and mental disorders amongst men in a funny, fictional type of way, based off of a lot of truth, but fictional. But I wanted to get that out of me in that kind of a way. Um, and when I was talking to my therapist about it and I had mentioned that, he says, that's exactly what you need to do because other men need to hear this. Other
Hmm.
men need to know it's okay to be in that place. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I've said a lot.
you did. And I mean, I think I said my piece in part one, that we put out, yesterday. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have much else to say on therapy. I think or trauma. I think I've largely said what I have.
Well, then I think we will kind of wind it down, but I do want to close it out with this because I just thought it was a neat anyway, and we can kind of touch on each if you like. But I was walking around the house doing my laundry and whatever house chores because I'm a bitch. But I got to thinking about it, and me diving into this world. I wrote this little Facebook post because sometimes I'll just use Facebook as personal notes. You know what I mean? It's not really for anybody. It's just for me to go, okay, well, there's a timestamp on it, and I type that, right?
Hmm.
But this is what occurred to me. Um, I posted it March the 18th, so earlier. So everything I'm learning about recovery now, I learned from Spider-Man as a kid. With great power comes great responsibility, or for unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall much be required. And to whom men have committed much of him, they will ask the more. It's from Luke 12:48. Remember that no matter how much power you have, there is still he who is above all, Stanley, watching down on you. Remember that being a hero doesn't mean you get to control the outcome of every situation. It just means that you conduct yourself in a manner that is expected of you by your higher power, Stanley.
Hmm.
Know that there will always be approaching villains from your internal rogues gallery, and it's best not to try and kill them, rather let them kill themselves. Show your closest friends who you really are under the mask. Accept that while with all your abilities, wit, charm, and skill, you will see many saved through you, but you simply cannot save everyone. Don't be afraid to crawl before you begin leaping from rooftops. Keep your web cartridges or your spiritual energy full, especially if you know you're going into a fight. Don't hesitate to call on other heroes for help if the fight gets too tough. Always keep your suit, spiritual armor on underneath your clothes because often the scrapes a hero faces are unexpected. Enjoy the view when you're at the top of skyscrapers. If you lose your spidey sense because of the chaos and fear around and inside of you, close your eyes and breathe. We walk by faith, not by sight. That's the whole point of spidey sense to begin with. While swinging high, don't panic and fight gravity when it tries to pull you back down. Instead, dive with grace and be sure to shoot your webs at surrounding structures, your support network. And with their strength and immovability, you will be able to swing higher with greater momentum than when you got to the top all by yourself. Always have a wisecrack ready for bad situations. If we always say someday we will look back and laugh, why wait? Don't be afraid to let others see you bleed. They need to learn how you heal. Don't be afraid to let others see you fall. They need an example of what it looks like to rise. Accept that sometimes you have to give up the things you want the most to do the job. That's the price of being a hero. Know that wearing the black suit too long will take you to some dark places where you run the risk of hurting those you love the most. Always have an uplifting and inspirational soundtrack to your stories. Don't let your past battles, victories, or defeats make you bitter and angry. Just because you've been through a lot doesn't give you the right to treat others poorly. Remember to always be a friendly neighborhood Spider Man. And keep in mind that no matter what is going on in your life, the story arc always ends after about 12 issues or so anyway, before another one starts. What do you think, man?
Yeah, no, that's. I really like how you put that. That's all. That's all true.
It's all true. Well, very
It's all
true.
true. It's all true.
Everything.
It contextualizes it well.
I thought so for a geek.
Don't say for a geek. It's true. It contextualizes it really well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I hope it helps other people too. I mean, I believe that you can find your higher power in the Bible, in the Quran, in the Bhagavad Gita, in comic books. God, or your higher power is going to basically wherever you find passion and zest in something, that's probably God's like microphone to you. Go with it, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
yeah. Go with it.
so, I don't know. I think we pretty
I,
much.
I think
Think,
we, yeah, I think we hit everything.
I think we hit everything. What's also cool about it, and I've even considered this, I'm like, okay, as I progress through therapy, more likely than not, we're going to interview my therapist.
Well, that'll be fun.
I think it would be really fun. You could get on here and tell everybody how crazy I am.
Oh, that. Yes, please. Can we do that tomorrow?
No, no, no. I'm gonna make some more progress for a while.
That that's
But
fair. Take as
but
much time as you need, but I want to do this. That
but
sounds
yeah, and
sounds awesome.
he would so be down for it too. I'm positive he'd be down for it. But it'd be funny. Tonight we're gonna be interviewing Daniel Lewis Crumpton's shrink.
I think that might be the first time a podcast has ever done that.
I don't know. Somebody will beat us to it now that I've said it. So
Yeah, we should edit this part out.
nah, be all right. But yeah, I'm probably gonna do that just just because it's me.
Dude, that
You know?
sounds fun.
Yeah, and it's like yeah. I think it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Anyway, so Mr. Wade, I feel better. I think this is also a form of therapy.
Good. Good.
So, you got any closing thoughts, man?
No, I spent this year, 2020, trying to grow in as many ways as I could. I went, we talked about this more in our previous recording that won't be airing. I started therapy, I lost weight, I dieted. This was a good year for me. This was this was a year that I graduated, I got my degree. I feel like this year was the middle level of a video game where you're just grinding away, leveling up. It's the boring part of the game. You're getting all the good gear for the final boss.
Yeah,
And I feel like I'm making progress.
yeah, I feel the same way too. I feel like I mean, I got a lot accomplished this year or in 2020 and up till now. I've gotten a lot accomplished. I'm actually surprised at how much has gotten accomplished through these trembling fingers. But
Yeah.
now that I've come to the part where it's like, all right, dude, it's time to patch up yourself. I'm very excited about what is going to be possible through this mortal coil. What the great director Stanley is going to wow me with. So, looking forward to it, man. So, guys listening by fate and circumstance, if you like what you heard, like us on all the stuff, all the doodads, you know how it works. Don't forget, you can go to zenonthecar.com and check out CannaSense Total Wellness. We are affiliated with those guys. Anybody who needs medical cannabis for any ailments that are torturing your soul, we actually accept recreational from all 50 states now. So it's even easier to get your medicine. So just go to cannasense.com, click on Become a Member. You can put in Daniel Lewis Crumpton or Zen in the Car as your sponsor, and you're off to the races. Also, I'm a big believer in driving for therapy with music. There's nothing like an open road with some good music and a full tank of gas. So we here at Zen in the Car make specialized playlists, and if you go to zeninthecar.com, there's a menu. Just click on music for driving good. Music for driving good. And there are some playlists there that we have put together for all your adventures on the road. And there's always going to be added more because I'm just addicted to music. Are you, Dylan?
I like music. I'm not addicted to it, but I like my music.
Oh, I love music. Music is the soundtrack of life. Other than that, we do now have a Patreon, so you can go to the menu and click on support our Patreon and throw us some change if you like. Like us on the Facebook, on the Twitter, follow us on the YouTube. Also, I do want to just reiterate to everybody to go to Richard Grannon's YouTube channel, Mental Fortress, for, if you really want some hardcore brass knuckles, very easy to understand psychological and emotional techniques and tricks to assist yourself in coping with whatever ails you. He breaks it down like a champ. I mean, it's good stuff. He's actually one of the other reasons that pushed me towards therapy is, he highly suggests it, and I want what he's got. So do that, and then also check the in the box below. There should be links for Maurice Falling's book, and we're going to have him on pretty soon. Other than that, Dylan, you want to wrap us up? This has been episode 2022. What's your last thoughts?
This has been none. This has been episode 2020. We finally did it. We finally recorded this.
We had to go to therapy first.
Yes, this episode made us work through our traumas.
Surely, yeah. Episode 2020. Finally, the straw that broke the camel's back. All right, everybody, enjoy your drive. Stay well.